Hospitable Bastards. The British Museum. Office of Dr. Bainbridge. Reclined into his own seat, Dr. Edward Bainbridge allowed himself a subtle grin as he stirred the freshly brewed tea, savouring the bitter aroma before introducing a splash of milk and spoon of honey into it. Mithras be damned. A good cup of tea was majestic beyond the majesty of Lord Mithras. Though, if he were honest, this whole sordid affair with Wellig and Valerius had been a headache. It was a wonder that in the same nights he exacerbated over the affairs of Wellig's hubris and the former Prince Regent's ego, that the neonates of his clan would bring him such satisfying results, and all in service to Anne Bowsley. If ever the right to laugh at the strange hands dealt by fate should be afforded to anyone, it should very much be to him in these nights. Taste-testing his tea, he mused. No. He wasn't a man to consign himself to fate. In fact, no Tremere should ever be. They were founded on defying fate. To limit yourself because anything so trivial as the thinly weaved fabric of fate sought to limit you was just silly. Ah, neonates. They, in their clumsy stumbling into one life, made such a racket that they shook the carefully laid pieces of the board, so those of greater station might be able to wiggle them free and refit the board in more favourable positions. He hardly paid attention to the thorns before. Promising enough to have earned the embrace, but little else of note. Genuinely, he had taken a greater interest in Edmund, but now he should very much like to have tea with their mortal parents, so he might compliment them on their stupendous achievement in raising these two wildcards, and to see if mother were as pretty as daughter. He smiled again into his cup before taking a deeper sip of his tea. After the business in this meeting, he would also be on the road to eliminating the frustrating creature who went by the name of Melon, who would also find out how neonates shook the board in their stumbling, this one being his own child. On second thought, he might allow himself a laugh after this was all done. A deep, throaty laugh, preferably while standing over Melon's ashes with his potent blood on his lip. Outside of the room, Bainbridge could hear the sound of approaching footsteps, a pronounced clack of a walking cane, and faint laugh no louder than a murmur before a sharp knocking came at the door to his office. Elevating a single brow over the rim of his glasses, "Come in," he called curiously. The door opened to admit the fop, otherwise known as Alexander Charnock, a Toreador from Yorkshire who had an infatuation with young Rebecca Thorne. Rebecca Grey had commented on him a handful of instances, and Bainbridge had seen him once or twice at Elysium, but he had never had the dubious pleasure of meeting him. Charnock was dressed as something of a late 18th century man, his dark green frock coat over the more sombre vestments of the age of industry, with a tall hat and jewelled cane, the flowing mane of hair and bouncing golden curls like some Russian doll. Raising his singular brow to his limits, Bainbridge sipped at his tea, eyeing the Toreador who swept into the room, thrusting close the door behind him with all the flamboyance of a prickly rose. "Good evening," Bainbridge said, welcoming him. "Might I help you?" he asked cheerily.
No. In fact, I'd much rather help you,"
Charnock said before shifting the chair in front of Bainbridge's desk with his cane, so he could take his seat.
"I'll be negotiating on the behalf of Elizabeth Grey. Pleasure to do business with you, Dr. Bainbridge. It's been too long since I've rolled my tongue with a man of the Tremere. Tell me, how's Wellig? Still his charming self?"
Charnock said, clacking the tip of his cane outstretched onto the front of Bainbridge's desk. Edward returned him with a warm smile. Quite. I'm sure he would appreciate your asking after him. I'll be sure to let him know you send your well wishes." They exchanged a warm smile with sardonic humours in their eyes.
"Yes, I'm sure he would like that. But all that aside,"
Charnock said, strongly implying to get things moving along. Bainbridge took a slow sip of his tea before setting the cup back onto the plate, then lifting his gaze to offer Mr. Charnock a polite smile. "If I might ask, Mr. Charnock, what is it that spurred this decision?" To my knowledge, you have avoided involving yourself too deeply into the politics of London. I wasn't even aware you knew Elizabeth Grey, Bainbridge asked.
I recently became familiar with her, in no small part due to members of Clan Tremere. Now, before you assume my darling Rebecca had anything to do with it, well, no. Her brother and Grey are, in fact, behind this. Involved in conspiracies by his invitation and her misbegotten belief that I could be used as a bridge without paying the toll. And also, because I am preoccupied with Elizabeth's ability to protect herself from the House of Mages who hate her sire so. I thought it would be only fair I stand in to represent her.
Charnock explained. Bainbridge took a sip of his tea, setting down the cup delicately. Quite. I can understand your concern and indignation, so much so I compliment your sympathy, Bainbridge answered. He began to speak again, but was rudely interrupted.
I'm plenty aware with the games played by your clan, Dr. Bainbridge, just as I am aware of your clan leaving corpses in Lionsgate with your clan's markings all over, and the chantry there being a sore thumb to any who open their eyes to see it. I'm not just some beautiful rose trying to stand out in a garden, so don't treat me like a fool.
Reclining, Bainbridge gestured with his hand out to Alexander to speak then, as clearly he came with something to say and offer.
You want Abraham Mellon? I can give him to you. Everything Elizabeth knows, I know. But I can do you one better. I can give you him and make it so that there is not a damned thing anyone can do about it, and...
He paused to recline in his own chair, a hand brought up to stroke at his lip before swinging to gesture up.
I can also hand you all the secrets of Stone Rose.
Leaning forward, Bainbridge refilled his cup of tea, then sat back, holding it level with his sternum. Please, Mr. Charnock, you have my full attention, he said with a sip of tea to punctuate his words. Charnock smiled, biting down on one of his long filed nails between his teeth.